Thank you. Will you remark further on the amendment, Senator Hwang? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam President. Through you to the proponent of this amendment, some questions.
Thank you.
Thank you to the good ranking chair, the ranking member of the Children's Committee where this bill came from, but I think there's a derivative of it in also public safety. But could you please clarify that this amendment addresses section 5 and 6 of the newly amended language specific to day camp? And could you please repeat the solution that you have provided in this amendment? Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Perillo.
Thank you, Madam President, and I thank the gentleman for his question. So yes, to the first half of that. The amendment before us strikes sections 5 and 6, which we recognize now as amended, are the sections on municipal requirement for licensure. That is the first section of what this bill this amendment does. And then secondly, it provides funding for those municipalities that choose to implement a background check.
Thank you, Senator Hwang.
Thank you. And in listening to the conversation on this amendment, we heard that should this take effect, that there is no state funding to address this mandate that's imposed on our municipal daycare agencies. And what this amendment would do is to provide relief for a state mandate on our agencies at such late hours in regards to its implementation. Would that be correct? Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Perillo.
Thank you, Madam President. And the gentleman is correct. During the discussion here today, we checked through one item after another, all of which would increase costs from an operational perspective, and many of which would require capital outlays as well. Yet, we all agree on both sides of the aisle that there is zero state funding to make any of it happen. Those costs would be borne by local property taxpayers. They would be borne by those families that utilize the service that is so vital in many of our communities. So the gentleman is absolutely correct. There is no state funding to do this. There is no way to cover these costs other than to put them on the backs of the folks who utilize them.
Thank you, Senator Hwang.
Thank you. Through you, I want to thank the good senator for raising it. It is an unfunded mandate, and this amendment addresses it. But I'm deeply even troubled should this amendment be supported, and I hope it does, that it doesn't solve the timing issue for many of our municipalities. At least the funding will give them an opportunity to have a choice to undertake the rigorous process that this entails. But should that be, and even as an unfunded mandate, through you to the proponent of this amendment, clarify further that we are very late in the season in regards to staffing, in regards to curriculum design, that these kind of background checks and the requirements of this unfunded mandate on section 5 and 6 would pose such a untenable and also a unachievable kind of a mandate on our community daycare facilities. As the ranking member in kids, where this bill comes from, were there discussions in regards to unintended consequences? I know you came in midterm, the good senator from Shelton, but were these kind of deliberations? For me, I reviewed over testimony that were submitted from many of the municipal daycare facilities that said this is an absolute untenable, unachievable, and it would be catastrophic for their daycare program, which might be canceled as a result of this. Through you, what you're providing in this amendment is at least a salvo of making that effort to try to salvage a program that did not listen to public testimony and input on the devastating impact it would have on daycare programs. Would that be correct? Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Perillo.
Thank you, Madam President. To the gentleman's question, I can only speak to the contents of the submitted testimony. The public hearings on this and the vote on this actually took place before I was here and before I was a member of the committee, but it only takes you a couple seconds to review the first few pieces of testimony to identify the fact that indeed towns made it very, very clear that either they could not implement these changes in a timely manner or an affordable manner, and in many cases, those towns indicated that they may need to close their day programs if this legislation took effect. And further to the gentleman's point, and you are absolutely correct, and Heather and Senator Summers mentioned it before as well. Our towns spoke out. They did it in unison. They did it very clearly. But nobody was listening. Nobody was listening. Their concerns fell on deaf ears. We are stating that unequivocally here today, and it appears today too that nobody's listening, and that's a shame.
Thank you, Senator Hwang.
Thank you, Madam President. I think it's important to note that this amendment addresses Section 5 and 6 that have created such outrage from many of the municipal leaders that seem to be falling on deaf ears. And also for me, I'm deeply troubled the fact that it undermines and taints a generally very good bill. That should this amendment be supported and passed, that the rest of the bill, I would dare say, have unanimous support, because the title says concerning resources and support for infant, toddlers, and disconnected youth. Well, through your answer on the amendment, there is no resources and there is no support. It is a state mandate that says, we're not listening to you. We think it's better. Now, make no mistake about it, as a big, strong supporter of our Office of Early Childhood and the difficult tasks that they have in the horror story that we've heard in the past year of a summer camp that was negligent and poorly staffed, that caused a horrible tragedy. But as mentioned before, it is an isolated incident. And if you worked with the municipality daycare camps that I know, particularly in Newtown and in Fairfield, the rigorous review process, the oversight and supervisory role of directors are critical. And what you have done in this kind of a language is to say, we don't trust you. We don't think you're doing your job. And we're going to make you run through hoops, spending hundreds of dollars for background checks of mostly high school students working to do a summer job. Look, make no mistake about it. My kids are 30 and 26. One of the richest experiences that they have had in a summer is to go to those day camps. And as a protective parent, I got to meet all these camp counselors who were college students, who were high school students, and who are now active parents and sent their kids to summer camp. Let's be clear. I know it is a solution trying to address a very important problem, but it is minute. It is literally, using the pun, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And in this case, unless this amendment is approved, you are literally throwing out hundreds of kids, creating chaos and uncertainty for hundreds of parents, and hampering municipalities' ability to provide a critical community service that has been proven over and over, year after year, to be an asset and contribution to the greater good of the community. So again, I urge support of this amendment to remove 5 and 6 and let us move on and pass a good bill that could be made to reflect the will of the people. Because right now, 5 and 6, Section 5 and 6, seems to say that we in government know better than you as camp counselors, know better than you as municipal leaders, know better than you than parents. If truly parents were concerned about the standard of review and the caliber of camp counselors, I can assure you they would be the first one talking to the municipal camp directors. I know I would be. We haven't had that. We haven't had incidents of that. So what this seems to me is a solution looking to solve one tragic incident while throwing every other legitimate, well-run, functional camp into disarray and possibly eradicate them forever. So I urge support of this, and I'm troubled. I'm deeply troubled the fact that we would impose these kind of unfunded mandates and just cavalierly say, no, we're not going to fund you. I think that is incredibly disrespectful to our municipal leaders that struggle every day to limit property taxes and burden our community. So I thank the proponent of this amendment in regards to addressing and removing 5 and 6, and let us all agree to this and move on and passing this important bill that we all like to support. So thank you, Madam President.
Senator Mark.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the opportunity to speak further on this amendment. First, I wanted to start with a little bit of history. And after I stopped being a social worker in a psychiatric hospital, I went out into the community to run camps, to be the executive director of the Horizons National Student Enrichment Program, which was bringing children from low-income families to independent day school campuses. And I know what oversight looks like on a camp. I had to travel around the country and go visit camps and make sure that camps were doing the things that we required of them to make sure that children were safe. And from there, I went on to person, where I, for 14 years, negotiated with municipal camps and private camps to make sure that every summer we were sending children from low-income families, more than 400 every summer, to these camps to make sure that they had exactly what my colleagues had spoken about, that they had enrichment, that they had a summer learning, that they had the excitement of being outdoors, and that they were ready to go back to school in the fall, ready to learn. So with all of that experience of overseeing camps at a national level and overseeing camps at a local level, at the municipalities, at the private camps, I have a lot of experience and background in this. And one of the things that I heard at the public hearing was an interesting interchange with a representative who was talking with some of the municipalities during the public hearing, asking questions of them. And what came forth is that many of the municipalities are already doing the background checks, similar to what the good senator from New Canaan just mentioned, that the New Canaan municipality is doing background checks and training and first aid training and all of the aspects that would be inherent in this bill. So when we look at this, when we look at the fact that many of our municipalities would be barely affected by the institution of this licensing, then it calls into question why my colleagues from across the aisle would want to take away this kind of oversight on the summer camps. Additionally, I just do want to point out that nowhere in regulations does it say anything about placement of trash cans, and that's just really important. And also the fact that background checks have been brought up again and again and again as a very big issue. And in fact, they are free. So I have heard a great deal from the pushback from municipalities, and I understand that they are afraid of the additional costs, but in fact, that is not a part of that additional cost. So, all of that being said, I urge my colleagues to vote no on this amendment. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Will you remark further on the amendment? Senator Hwang, for the second time on the amendment.
Yes, ma'am, for the second time. Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to follow up, not to the proponent of the amendment, but to the good chair of the Kids Committee. to be able to kind of ask her, sense her statement in a couple of points. If I may, through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Marr.
Thank you. To the good chair of the Kids Committee, I always want to call it children, but I applaud and appreciate that her background has she shared in addressing the amendment and the good work that she's done and knowing that she has done great work. And she talked about the impact that these summer camps provided for many of those children in our communities that value the support and the program. So through you, Madam President, to the good chair, what would you have thought if you had these programs and they were canceled, and that these children that you talk so glowingly about the opportunity and the experience that they gain, that in a glimmer or a stroke of a vote that we impose a mandate that these programs are no longer available to you, that you talk so glowingly about when you were a director, because that's what we're hearing is, what would you do then? So through you, Madam President, I ask for the good chair's experience, if that was thrust upon her as a program director, to provide these kind of programs, so all of a sudden that they did not exist anymore. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Marr.
Through you, Madam President. Thank you to the good senator for his question. I do know that there are a number of things that were brought up previously that one in particular that I failed to mention. When there was a conversation from the good senator on the over there, I can't see the district, from the whatever district, sorry, that the ratios were no longer going to be doable. I want to just point out that the cost that everyone is pointing to, I'm not seeing where this cost is coming from, because the ratios are the same. The kind of training that they already are getting at the camps for first aid, for mandatory reporting training, all of the components that we have heard from the municipalities. When I sat down with municipalities, when I've talked to first select persons, when I have also talked to associations of Parks and Rec, all of the pieces that have been put forth as opposition, in fact, are at anywhere near the level of the good senator at the end of the circle when he mentioned 50 to 80%. So where I'm getting to this, Senator, is the 50 to 80% increase that has been talked about, the catastrophizing that has been talked about, is not in keeping with my understanding from the work that I have done on this bill.
Thank you. Senator Hwang.
Thank you. I thank the good chair, and I know, based upon her experience, my familiarity, I applaud the well-intentioned of it. But nevertheless, I think there seems to be some disagreement in regards to the associations and the municipalities that the good chair cited that would not object to this, and that it would not be catastrophic in shutdowns. But I don't know, because from the testimonies and the people that have reached out to me, particularly in the two towns that have very, very extensive daycare summer programs, in Newtown and in Fairfield, this would be catastrophic. And should it not close because it serves such a invaluable community service and an outlet for our youth in the summer months, this then would then be a municipal mandate cost. It would affect the bottom line of property taxes. We cannot be so presumptive and arrogant in the Gold Dome to presume the consequential effect of what we do here does not impact elsewhere. But again, there seems to be some very, very strong disagreement in regards to the impact. So therefore, again, why the hurry? Why the hurry? It speaks to, in some ways, the arrogance of power, because we can. But the consequences affect people that we represent. So the good chair mentioned that there were many organizations that supported this. Could the good chair articulate a specific number? Let's just put 169 towns, some of them very small, may not have day camps. Let's just use a number of 150 towns with summer camps provided by municipal. When she cites many, could the good chair articulate how many? 5, 10, 20, 75? What does she define by many that seems to be acquiescent and supportive of this idea? Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Marr.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, to the good senator's question, I did not count up, but I did sit in the public hearing, throughout the entire public hearing, listening to the municipalities, listening to their issues, their concerns, and also to the dialogue that happened between the municipalities and one of the members of the committee. And in my conversations pursuant to that, I did sit with municipalities and I did sit with associations and had these conversations. So while I did not count them up, I did read the testimony, I did listen to the testimony, and I did work with municipalities.
Thank you, Senator Hwang.
Thank you, Madam President. I do not doubt the good work of the chair and the ranking members of the various committees and work, but when she cites many, it opens the door to get an exact number. 4 or 5, very vocal, does not reflect the overriding majority. But I'll move on to the second point, where she cited New Canaan from the good senator from the 36th district, which he represents proudly. And she, the good chair of the Kids Committee, cited that New Canaan does these kind of background checks and these various requirements that's articulated in Section 5 and 6. But she struck me by saying that in a key point of differential. They were optional. They were decisions made by the day camp of their own volition, of their own decision to do so. And I applaud them for that. But it is not a mandate. What we're proposing in this very, very good bill, save for Sections 5 and 6, is now we're telling all 169 towns, every single day camp of municipal guidance or jurisdiction, that you have to do it. And you have to impose the cost. And by the way, we're not going to pay for any of it. So again, the good senator raised a very good point. New Canaan, I applaud you. Many other towns, as she articulated, are pursuing this course of action. God bless you. But they're doing it on their own. They do not have the heavy hand of the ivory golden dome and the state senate dictating that you have to do it, that we know your community better than you do, and you're going to have to do it as an unfunded mandate without any money from me and imposing that on you. So again, I urge support of this amendment to remove 5 and 6 and let us parcel through how many these communities truly support the sections of 5 and 6 and how many of these communities choose to take the optional decision to do so at their own budget volition. Not a mandate from the state government, not a presumption of many, because we don't know how many. And I eagerly await, truly, if I have a majority of 150 towns using a number, and over 80 says, I support this, then you got me first in line to support 5 and 6. But I don't have that number. And it's presumptuous of us, and dare I say, arrogant of us to say that the few towns that we know, the few towns that we have interacted with, tells us it's a good idea. So we're going to impose it on everybody else in the state. So again, we're talking about the amendment. I thank the good chair of the Kids Committee for offering her viewpoint, and I know it's unusual for me to ask her a question, but her statement in opposing this amendment led me to ask the questions and the presumption of the decision-making that led to Sections 5 and 6 in this bill. But again, I urge support of Section 5 and 6 in this amendment. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Will you remark